Hi everyone, welcome to another WordPress Melbourne meetup. I'm just going to do a really quick show of hands. Who's been to a meetup before here? Cool, more than half. And are the others new faces, first timers as well? Yep. Awesome, that's good. Great to see. For those of you who haven't been to Inspire 9 before, the toilets are just around near the kitchen, around behind there if you need them. Fire exit over there. Hopefully we don't need that. All right, let's get into it. First of all, I just want to do a really quick thank you to Invato, who are the sponsors that provided all the pizza tonight. So hopefully you had a good feed there, and I think there's still pizza up there during the breaks if you want to jump up and get some more. And also likewise Inspire 9 for letting us use this venue free of charge. It's really appreciated. For those of you who haven't seen Inspire 9 before, it's a co-working space where you can actually come a day a week to work at a desk, and a day a week is actually free of charge too. So if you're interested in coming along here, Catherine up the back there, she is a good person to have a chat to if you're looking for somewhere to work from apart from your bedroom. And also to Uber, who are providing free rides to and from tonight if you're interested in not getting the train home. Like, I'm happy to not use the train tonight if possible, but they've generously offered to give free rides up to $75 tonight. There's some more details there and on the meetup site as well. First of all, we'll just do our usual WordPress news segment. To get things started, the next version of WordPress that's coming out is WordPress 3.6, and that's getting closer to being released. From what I can tell, it's actually behind schedule, but it is getting closer day by day. So there's some cool things in 3.6 that are coming out, like native audio and video support, so you can actually embed an audio file or a video file directly on your WordPress site, and it will turn it into a nice little video and audio player without having to put it on YouTube or anywhere else like that. So that's something that's in 3.6, which I think is pretty cool. The new default theme 2013 looks pretty interesting too, quite different to the last ones. And also, what else have we got in there? For the developers here, I mentioned the local autosave and post locking, which is probably actually going to be handy. Anyone that has a WordPress site where there's more than one author, or you've got multiple people writing and editing posts and pages, that'll be a really handy feature. It does a lot better job at detecting if someone else is editing a post at the same time, and it's good, really great for multi-author blogs. And also for those more audio stuff, Spotify and audio, you can embed those tracks directly in WordPress pretty easily as well. And also, speaking of Invato, they run Theme Forest and Code Canyon, which are marketplaces where you can buy and sell WordPress themes or plugins and various other file types as well. Recently, they've actually given everyone an option too, where you can, if you're an author on there, you can make all your stuff GPL compatible, which makes all the WordPress people very happy. So that's been fairly big in the WordPress industry. Good news there. And also, if anyone, who's had a look at the MP6 plugin so far? Yep. Cool. So it looks pretty cool. It's basically potentially the new dashboard interface version that they may or may not add to a future version of WordPress. Instead of doing that in core, they're experimenting with it in a plugin. So that's pretty cool. It's especially handy if you use the WordPress dashboard on your iPad or on an iPhone. You've obviously got the WordPress native app that you can download, but if you wanted to just do it via a web browser, that new MP6 interface is actually really good at doing that too. It's nice and responsive and works well on those devices. More WordPress news. There's been a fair few things come up. For those people in the room that are either running or trying to run a business around WordPress, i.e. providing WordPress services or selling themes or plugins or various other things, that Pressnomics conference just got announced yesterday, or this morning actually, in the US in October. It's a long way to travel. I actually went to it last year with another couple of guys from Melbourne, and we found it really great, got a lot out of it, and I think it's helped us personally for my business. It helped me change a few things and figure out what I was doing right and wrong. So if anyone's interested, it's worth looking that one up too. And another event, but this one's actually closer to home. I'm just going to hand it over very quickly to our friend Sam, who's going to give a quick rundown about Angel Hack Melbourne.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Just let me plug in. I've got one of the old ones, so it's always hard to find. Yeah, I made this joke last night, so if anyone was at the WebDev Melbourne Meetup, please laugh again. But yeah, it feels really weird being called Sam. That's what my mum calls me. Everyone else calls me Frenchie, so if I don't know you, lovely to meet you. Yeah, so I usually look around the York Butter Factory. I'm currently hosting Angel Hack Melbourne there, not this weekend, but next. So it's a hackathon like any other one if you haven't experienced them before, 48-hour session, obviously strong code focus, but there's obviously requirements for design and hustle as well. The difference with this one is that the winning team gets accepted into a 3-month accelerator in Silicon Valley. So if that's interesting to you, definitely apply. If that's not interesting to you, there's Nerf guns and Xboxes and other things that are also really interesting. Again, I made that joke last night and I think I got a better response here, so thanks. Cool. But yeah, for you guys, because you're all awesome, I'll leave that up on screen. We've got the code WordPress Meet, which is 50% off tickets. So yeah, all the details are up there if you want to take a photo of it. It'll be on there for another few seconds, otherwise I'll make sure it gets emailed out. But there's one person taking photo, so all good. Cool. All right, I'll make sure that gets out to you guys, but I'll shut up now. Thanks very much. Have a good night.
Okay, and just out of interest actually, who here is either currently running or wanting to start a business around WordPress? Cool, that's more than half the people here, that's great. So yeah, Pressnomics, good option, but obviously a long way away, so it can be a bit impractical. But on a similar theme to that, there's a few of us in Melbourne that want to run a similar event in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane, depending on, we haven't decided where yet. Same kind of theme, a conference about, it's specifically for people that are running businesses around WordPress. So instead of a WordCamp, which is typically for users of WordPress or developers of WordPress, we're really keen to get a conference off the ground that's specific to people and businesses that are actually trying to make money or are making money off using WordPress. So we haven't really got any of the details sorted out yet, which is actually why we are hoping that we can get some feedback. There's a really quick survey there if you're interested. There's about 5 questions on there. Some of them really simple. We just want to figure out what kind of content would be really useful to people, whether it should be in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane. I think everyone here would probably vote for Melbourne, hopefully. So if you wouldn't, yeah, yeah, there has been. That kind of thing is a potential option too, so that's good. So if anyone is interested in that kind of concept, then really quick survey there, that'd be really appreciated. Now let's get into the good stuff, where I get to stop hassling you all and we get someone else up that actually knows what they're talking about. I'm going to hand it over to Elliot, who is doing a talk about his advanced custom fields plugin. While he's getting set up, where is he? Good, that's good. He hasn't done a runner. Nice. Just give us a second to switch this over and get him set up.
You can do it, yeah, go for it.
Just while Elliot's getting set up there, who here has heard of the Advanced Custom Fields plugin? Awesome. Looks like people read the agenda, saw you were talking, and thought I better come along to that. So that's good.
Cool.
Yeah, he's one of the 2 people I know in Melbourne that have actually got a WordPress plugin that they're trying to turn into a business, or have turned into a business. So personally, I'm really interested to hear a story about how it's evolved and everything. So and if most people here have heard of ACF as well, they're probably here for the same reason. So if everyone can make Elliot Condon feel welcome, that'd be great.
Thanks. Thank you.
You happy with the split screen?
Yeah, no, the split screen is great, although I can't actually see where we are. But Perhaps this will work.
Button somewhere up there.
From the start.
Cool.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Right, so thanks for the intro. My name's Elliot. I'm the developer of the Advanced Custom Fields plugin. So in this presentation we'll have a look at kind of an insight into just running a premium plugin. Maybe there's some stuff in there that you guys can take away and put towards your projects, but I'll also be talking about the kind of general story behind how I ended up with it and then kind of day-to-day tasks, stuff like that. So let's just address this first question. Can a WordPress plugin earn you a full-time salary? The answer is yes. The answer is, yeah, very much so, yes. Just wanted to get that out of the way, and then we'll have a look at the rest. So let's start with the prologue. The prologue to Advanced Custom Fields was actually another plugin. I'm not sure if any of you have ever even heard of it or seen of it, but it was called Custom Field Matrix. Here we've got a screenshot of Custom Field Matrix, and there's actually a few more. You'll notice, if you're familiar with ACF, that they're very similar to the repeater field. What was happening here is, this is going back 2 years ago, and I was doing some freelance work just out of uni. And at the time we were doing a lot of work with Expression Engine that's already got your custom fields built in quite well. It uses, there's one guy who makes a lot of great plugins for it, one of them called a matrix field. And it was a very simple field, you know, you add kind of subfields to it and you can replicate them down a page and create repeatable content. And at the time I thought, well, that was brilliant, having to have this, well, being able to have this repeatable data. And WordPress didn't have that. At the time I didn't even realize that WordPress didn't have custom fields at all. But at the time I was just more kind of thinking about this repeatable data. So I made this plugin, the Custom Field Matrix. It was very simple. It had, I think, 3 or 4 different kinds of subfields. There was an image, text, it's probably written there, image, link, text area. And basically it was set up so that you could make an image gallery. It would return you an array of data and you could loop through it quite easily, and it was very good for creating an image gallery. And a few people, you know, I worked on this for maybe a few months, and it was working really well. I started to realize that the fields that it had weren't good enough. You know, an image field was too basic, text field, you know, what if people want to do more advanced kind of stuff? And I started thinking, well, I'll start creating all these amazing fields for it. But then I decided to, in fact, take a step back, as I realized what I was doing was creating a whole bigger plugin. Custom Field Matrix was just such a small part of the Advanced Custom Fields plugin, which is what I went on to make. Also at the same time, I think some people must have been saying to me, you could actually create an income from this. You know, this plugin has the potential to do great things. It's user-friendly, and it works, and WordPress doesn't offer it out of the box, and it's needed for developers who make, you know, custom WordPress themes, custom installs. And so I thought about repackaging this Custom Field Matrix, repackaging it within another plugin and making this a premium add-on. And so this led to developing ACF, where the Custom Field Matrix plugin was just one simple add-on within the bigger ACF plugin. Okay. And so what we're going to have a look at here is kind of the structure of ACF and what I thought about when I was making it. I guess at the time I had Custom Field Matrix. That's good. So we had the idea that there would be this one add-on of repeatable data. But there was the idea that, say, if I was to charge for this add-on, how do I go about that? And there's 2 ways you can go about it. You've either got the free and pro route, or you've got the free with premium add-ons. And kind of like what an iPhone app does to you. It's a free download and then you have in-app purchases. And that's the route that I went down. But there was a few things along the way that kind of made me get to that. So we'll start off with the WordPress.org repository. And this was one of the main factors. This is brilliant. Their repository is genius. It's dead simple to use and you have amazing distribution with it. You know, there's millions of WordPress installations hooked up to this repository. You can update it via, you know, SVN if anyone has kind of done plugin stuff. It's similar to Git, not as nice, but it does the same thing. So that's nice. So you had this great kind of repository that people could access, people could download very easily, install. You know, it's so much easier to just set up a WordPress site and go to the plugins, add new, type it in. Even with the new WordPress, you've got favorites, so it can be favorited. That had to be there. The other idea is that in doing this, you have one repository to update. So this is playing at the idea is if you were to do a free and premium version, that premium version has to be hosted somewhere. So where are you going to host that? And so you may host it on your own server, and that's all well and good, but then you've got these two repositories that you have to keep updated. And if you make a bug fix to one, you have to make a bug fix to both. What happens if you forget to make that bug fix? What happens if it goes wrong? Which it always will. And so having that one repository, just WordPress.org, that again is a really good thing. Another great benefit of using the WordPress.org repository is that it equals the weight that is assumed for your support. And what I mean is, if you were to have a free plugin and then a premium plugin, the people that are buying the premium plugin would expect better support, and the people using the free are probably going to get a little bit frustrated or annoyed that your support may not be as good as what the premium people are getting. And it's the whole idea, again, coming back to the WordPress.org, if everyone's downloading from the same repository, and therefore they're all using the same code, therefore the support can be even, and no one has these assumptions that you're going to deliver the best support to them just because they bought your plugin. So that's a really nice thing. Again, you've got, so we've got the next one, which is easy to add more add-ons. So, you know, I had the custom field matrix as an add-on. That was going to be the first add-on into ACF as the repeater field. But I wanted to think about how do I add in more plugins at once. And again, this idea of having one repository with then premium add-ons seemed to work. And that ties into the next point, which is it would be very hard to price the pro version at the start, because at the start all I had was this repeater field. And it's just one field. How do you make a pro version with just one feature better than the other? And then it also got me thinking, what if I have other premium add-ons? What happens when I have my second premium add-on? Does the price of that pro version go up? What happens to the people who have already bought it? Then they might get quite a bit annoyed that I've just changed the price. So I think a great structure is using this free premium, free WordPress.org repository. I think it's brilliant, and then selling premium add-ons that hook into your free plugin. And at the end of the day, all of this equals a happy developer. You know, having just one place to update, having people using it, it's a happy developer. And at the end of the day, a happy developer is going to create better work, and you're going to have happier users. And I think the real reason to ACF's success is that the users of it, and I hope they are happy. And I think that's why it's been successful, because let's keep in mind that ACF was not the first plugin to create custom fields. I remember when I was building it, I was using in my freelance projects, I think, I can't even remember the name of it. It was a terrible custom field plugin. It had a very basic interface, and you typed in some weird text box area and it would generate fields. It was interesting. You know, there's magic fields and heaps of other ones. Can't remember them off the top of my head. Pods was around. So ACF hasn't been, you know, the first contender, and it doesn't even have the most features. Let's be honest. You know, Pods does some crazy stuff, and I think last week or the other week at the Melbourne WordCamp, we saw a new plugin that's got the most craziest API and features for custom fields we've ever seen. So, you know, ACF can't compete with that. But what it can compete with is a few other things. And I think this is what is key to making a successful plugin, or even theme, or kind of any WordPress-related venture. And that's the whole experience of a plugin is not just the plugin's code. It's about half of it. You've got to have a good plugin. But what you need just as equally is a good website. And I know that I've passed up on plugins when I'm doing websites, freelance or otherwise. Just passed up on them because the website was too hard to use. The documentation wasn't there. The support I could see never got answered. It looked like it had bugs. I just gave up on it. So I think a real success is to have your plugin, but also to have your website. So we're going to talk about that. I think the website is more important than the plugin. And you might be sitting there and just, serious? Yeah, I'm dead serious about it too. So this is the ACF website, and this is however many renditions in, I'm not even sure. But it's designed to be simple, designed to look stable. Design isn't that important, but it is nice. What is super important are your resources. The resources couldn't be more important. I'm trying hard to get more and more resources. I know that there aren't enough, but that's one thing I'm trying to get more of. So I think if you were to go down this avenue of making, say, a custom plugin, definitely have those resources there from the start. It's super important. When someone starts using your plugin, they actually don't know what that plugin does. You know what it does. And that was the trap I fell into for a while. I really understood my plugin, and I was confused at why no one else would understand it. And I have the same thing. I'll start using something and I'll go to their site and expect them to dummy feed me. Even though I'm a developer and I understand code, I expect to be dummy fed information. I don't know why, but it's maybe something to look into, but maybe as I don't know why people think some ways or whatnot. But yeah, resource is definitely important. And I guess it kind of plays on, even if you get slightly frustrated at some software, you'll probably give up on it. So don't let the user get frustrated at your software. And that usually comes down to your documentation. So the next part of the website is the actual add-ons. So this is where I'm selling the premium add-ons. At the moment we've got 4. The repeater field, which is what kind of drove the whole thing. That was the custom field matrix plugin. We've got a gallery field, options page, and flexible field. I won't talk about them too much, but they all serve their purpose. Repeater field is there for repeating data. Flexible content field is similar, but quite odd in the sense that you can create different layouts. It's nice for kind of doing widget or module-based stuff. Options page, global data. And the gallery field, which is, dead simple UI, but it's something that's used on every website. It's just to dump a whole bunch of images in there, reorder them. So I guess what I've tried to do is keep equal weight for what the add-ons do. Nothing there is kind of bigger than the other one. They're all very simple and they all work together. And I think that's nice. What have we got here? So I guess pricing is another thing to look at. These are all priced at, these top 4, these below here are free add-ons, which we're working out at getting more. But these are all priced at $25 each. And I think price-wise that's good. When I was doing this work with Expression Engine, just for that one repeater field, it was from Tonic and Lime, I think, is the guy who makes it. It's called the Matrix field. And I think it was something like $70 just for one license, and that was per site as well. And this guy must have been making a killing, because every time we did a website at a previous place that I was working at, we'd buy this and all of his other ones for every single site. And I thought that was great, but I don't want to go down that. I felt that was a little bit too greedy, and I know that per site licenses are very common, and then you've usually got a developer license. I guess maybe I went into this with a different angle, that it was never going to be business orientated, it just kind of happened to be. So I went with, just a multi-site license, $25, thank you for your donation, and just, use it forever, it's all yours type thing. And, you might be thinking from a business point of view, you're losing out on heaps of money. I don't want to do that. But what you've got to realize is you're selling in numbers. It's like an iPhone app. Think of it as an iPhone app, that you sell your app for $1. But if you sell 1 million apps, it's $1 million. So it's all about selling of numbers, and I think a lower price doesn't actually equate to less income at all. Okay. Let's move on. The to-do list. This is a small part of the website, but I think it is quite important to keep in mind, is to be very open with everyone about what you're working on. If there is a bug, list it, that it's being worked on, so people can feel confident that you are, continuously developing on this plugin. This is quite simple. It's basically got links to the support forum threads that the problems are there. Simple bug tracker. I think it's quite nice. And this kind of leads us up to the most important part of any kind of WordPress venture, is your support. And this is a love-hate relationship that I have with this thing. Support is something that you have to do, and some days you hate it, and some days you love it. Don't expect to get positive feedback. It happens so rarely. That's something that I found out the hard way. I got quite down for a while about the fact that I just got no positive feedback about my plugin, and there was just people complaining that it didn't make their logo, I don't know, shine and bounce around on the top of the page, and they put data into the field, and why doesn't that show up as a custom sliced through thing on their page? And you know, so there's a lot of kind of more negative feedback. But as long as they're not actually having a go at the plugin, as long as it's just a bug, that's cool. So don't expect to get positive feedback. It comes rare, and when it does, that's great. But what I think of now as no feedback is good feedback. If no one's telling me that it's awful, that means that everyone's telling me it's great. So support started off pretty slowly, but it picks up speed, and I think it picked up a bit too much speed because I didn't have enough resources in place. And I'm talking about documentation when I say resources. So I think that's a huge importance. Get those documentation, those articles done. Think of everything. Keep them small as well. You know, don't try to put too much content into one document article. I found that I had only a few articles, but they were very in-depth, and people wouldn't find the relevant information. So, you know, having more articles with less content is sometimes also a better thing as well, I found. So day to day, I'm spending about 1 to 2 hours on support, answering questions. It's quite nice that you can actually see an evolution of your plugin, that bugs are getting fixed, and the actual questions that get asked are less about problems and more just general questions, as in, you know, I'm trying to hook in and customize this value to be something that I posted from over here. And that's when it's kind of great to see people actually using your plugin as you intended, and not just complaining that it doesn't show up. Also, I think one thing to note is coming back to the structure of ACF, the sense that, or the idea that it's a free plugin with premium add-ons. You're going to drastically change the people, or the percentage of people, the audience that you're working with. So in my situation, we've got a free plugin, premium add-ons. It's free to everyone. So that means it's being downloaded by every single type of person. There's no paywall in the way for someone to start using it, which means you are opening up the floodgates to absolute noobs who have never coded before. And they're going to start using it, and they're going to start asking questions. If you would go down the other route of having a free version and a premium version and offering support to premium, that's probably a benefit in the sense that you're going to be dealing with developers, and they're actually going to understand how to post a problem. I think the biggest problem I have on here is actually the questions that get asked aren't asked in the way that I would maybe prefer them, being a developer. I think developers have maybe a different logic. When someone says it doesn't show up, I ask where. On the front end, back end, in your code, have you debugged anything? Have you printed out? You know, so you're changing who your audience is on your support forum. That takes up a lot of time. So I guess that's one con that I have, choosing the kind of architecture or the structure that I have. Which I guess brings us on to work balance, part-time, full-time, or all the time. In my case, it's all the time. It has been full-time, and I guess it's kind of part-time as well. So it started off as just a you know, project on the side, and that was cool. You know, maybe an hour after work, and I was working full-time at that stage. And it got to a stage maybe a year in. I was still working that full-time job and then managing ACF after hours, and I was doing maybe 4 or 5 hours outside of work, and it was crazy. No one can keep up with that. You know, I did not have a life at that stage, and so I quit my hours left. If you're working part-time 4 hours a day, you've only actually got 2 hours left to do bug fixes and features, and that's if you work as an absolute machine and don't stop. So at the moment, I guess my lifestyle is part-time at 24, so that's 4 hours a day, a couple hours on support, and then some work on ACF in the afternoon, which isn't great. You know, it's not great for ACF. I should be dedicating more time to it. But I feel like it's at a stage at the moment where it's quite stable and I can take a step back from it. Saying that though, I will be taking some time off my part-time work. The guys down at 24 have been great enough to let me take maybe a month or two off and just solely focus in on ACF. And I think that's quite healthy, you know, taking off, you know, some dedicated time to work on your project. But not just quitting, not just moving on, but just taking some time to do it and then coming back refreshed. I think that this kind of lifestyle of working on, you know, software on like an entrepreneurial level, you need to kind of mix it up. So I think being able to take a month off here or there, that's great. So problems, I was asked to talk about what kind of problems I had. Undefined index. Yeah, so problems I had. Let's start at the top. Let's start with WordPress as a problem. Now, the biggest problem I had with them was the rules and terms and conditions of their repository. This blew up in my face maybe 6 months ago, or maybe less. It was when the whole Envato WordPress GPL thing happened. And basically, WordPress went through all their repositories and started checking everything, because previously they hadn't really been checking anything, I don't feel. I talked to, obviously from the start now, I just want to make this clear that from the start, ACF was a free plugin, but it actually had the premium code within the free plugin, which was hidden behind a paywall. So you'd enter in an activation code and then it would load in that file. Anyone could hack it, go ahead. Yeah, and you know, that was something that I knew at the start as well, and I thought, well, I could build up all this security and you know, waste weeks of my life building all this activation code stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm building it for developers, and if they're not going to you know, pay for a premium license and use it respectively, well then they're not my clients, or not my customers, sorry. But let's talk about WordPress. So from the start, I did contact them and I asked them, look, this is what I'm planning to do. It's going to be a free plugin. It's got all these fields, but there will be this activation code level in there. And they said that's fine. They said all of your plugin is pretty much free except for this one bit. We're totally happy for you to host it with us. All good. And I thought, cool. So I sat on that horse all the way up to version 3.5.8.2, which was about 6 months ago. And everything was sweet, everything was good. And then this Envato thing happened, and I got some emails from WordPress saying, you're violating our terms and conditions. And I said, well, that's totally fine, I respect that, and I am, knowingly. But I thought that that was okay, and they said, no, it's not. And so the outcome of that was that I cleaned out my repository, so ACF just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth for about a month. So sorry about that, genuinely sorry. And I started work on version 4, and version 4 was rebuilding it from the start up to be less object-orientated and more free-flowing in the sense that the add-ons didn't have to be activated through an activation code and then loaded in. They'd be separate plugins that just hooked in like jigsaw pieces. And so that took me a lot longer than I thought. It took me about 3 months to rewrite that plugin, rewrite ACF with the new add-ons. But now the current setup is great. You know, you got your free plugin and you got 4 separate plugins that you download and then activate. So their change in rules really broke ACF for a while and made my life pretty stressful. You know, I don't have anything against their choice. I respect their choice, totally fine. But I wish that perhaps maybe I had thought that may happen, and I'd built version 4 a long time ago, in the sense that I stripped all the premium code out and put them into separate plugins. Let's look at the middle one. We've got WordPress compatibility. This is going to be your biggest problem, is making sure your plugin or software or theme is compatible with everything out there. You know, they're not just using ACF, and when I say they, anyone, you know, building a WordPress site, they're not just using ACF, they're using, say, some navigation plugin, and they're using a form plugin, and something to do custom roles, and one of these other plugins has unidentified index error, and then that breaks ACF, and then it comes back to you on your support forum. So compatibility is hard, but I feel like ACF is fairly compatible with things. Translation stuff, it's getting there, it's not amazing, but that's a whole can of worms. And so it's good though, but you're going to get that all through your support forum, and they'll let you know what's not working, and you'll be able to build it in. But it's good to keep in mind compatibility, install other plugins and see that everything is working. Migration's been a massive problem. Version 1, 2 and 3 all had different data formats. I played around, I was growing as a developer, and as the first major plugin I've built, and so version 1 started off using native custom fields. Version 2 went off and used custom tables. Version 3 scrapped those tables and went right back to custom fields. And version 4 hasn't changed anything, which is good. I'm happy using the native custom fields. And this was kind of a big play on performance, and maybe some custom tables would be faster than custom fields. I can do better querying, blah blah blah. So that's been a big problem, is handling that migration and data loss on people's websites. Now though, very stable, nothing is going to change. And I guess another big problem is your host. I went through about 3 hosts over the past 3 years. The typical stuff, the website goes down. No one can get their activation code, etc. Can't find documentation. So it's quite important to have a solid host. Okay, and we'll start to wrap up. Blank screen. What would I do differently? Let's go through these. So right now the version 4 add-on structure is how I would build anything from now on, and that is having a free plugin but selling individual plugins that hook in to add in extra functionality. So don't include the actual premium code within the original plugin. Pull it out in separate plugins and sell them individually. It's going to make your life a lot easier. These plugins can update separately, they can be installed separately, and it means you won't get yourself into the situation I did with the WordPress repository. I would have tons of documentation and resources from the start. That was something I started off not having. I just barely had any resources. I thought that everyone using my plugin would be at the kind of level that I was at the time. I thought that if I understood what this function does, everyone will understand what that function does, and that's not the case. You need lots of resources, lots of code examples, and lots of English language. The support forum, I'd have that set up from the start. That was something I introduced later on, and for a while support was kind of all over the place in emails, which is never good. And always keep, I would have started off in GitHub. I was new to Git over the last year. I would have started off in Git, would have made life a lot easier to handle updates, in the sense that if you were to make a bug fix, you commit or you Git pushes and stuff, so that you can actually see what you changed. If you ask me what a bug was and what a fix was for anything in version 2 or 3, I wouldn't be able to tell you what I did because I've got no history of any of that. So I love the fact that GitHub gives you, or Git of any sort, gives you that history control. And looking forward to the future. What's going to happen? So more fields. I feel like the fields haven't actually changed in a while, so I'm going to be putting a lot of work into making some new fields. Perhaps maybe a premium field that I'm playing around with, but I just want to create a lot of free fields. 3.6 WordPress has got this new kind of video, audio, automatic conversion thing, so I want to bring that in as a field, and more kind of JavaScript. I feel like all the fields in there are kind of native HTML fields. I want to bring in a bit more kind of JavaScript interactive type stuff. More location rules. One of the latest updates had a nice rebuild for location rules, but I feel like it could still be better. Better support for WPML and also Qtranslate, which are the 2 main contending translation plugins. ACF is actually used quite a bit with them overseas, and it's a nightmare because these plugins, I've got no idea how they work, and they're massive. So that's going to be something that I'll be working on. Also Gravity Forms, I feel like there's a very, Gravity Forms is great, and I'm sure that we all use it on our sites. But there's no real proper integration with ACF. I feel like you can't you know, I'm sure everyone's had the issue of when you were trying to save a post or something with Gravity Forms into an ACF field and it didn't format correctly, etc. So do some work with that, more resources and a smarter forum. I want the forum to start telling you what to look at, you know, as you're typing in questions, stuff like that. And I guess also lastly is address licensing for plugins. Basically there's not much licensing with ACF. It's kind of, you can use it within premium themes. At the moment you can't use it within premium plugins. Need to address that. It's the whole idea of reselling the ACF plugin. I think we're going to go with just a very simple idea in the sense that you can just use it, because I don't want to have to deal with the kind of legal jargon that's involved with licensing. It's not what ACF is about, it's not what it's ever been about, so we'll address that. Cool, so some inspiration at the end. Make the audience feel motivated. I really recommend that you watch this movie called The Startup Kids. It was a documentary about a whole bunch of entrepreneurs, mainly over in the States. And it's guys there from Dropbox and Vimeo and whatnot. And I love this guy's quote, this guy's Sam Lesson. He says that you're never having a good day. You're either having the best day of your life or you think you're about to die. And I think that that's brilliant, because when you do create some software and people start using it, that insane amount of pressure that's put on you, you really do have either an amazing day or just the worst day of your life. So cool, that kind of wraps up everything. I hope that you guys can take some stuff away from this and that I haven't just been rambling. And please, questions.
Yep, awesome. Time for questions, so if anyone...
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yeah. You don't get out of it that easily.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Oh, we've run out of time. Yeah, shoot.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First of all, what are you using for your support forum?
Yes.
Secondly, the website looked really great. I was just wondering if you used a kind of pre-made theme or if you got the website.
Yeah, cool. So the support forum was actually kind of went down just an easy route, which is just to literally use a forum software called Vanilla Forum, and just made a custom skin for it. I know that there's heaps of like support orientated softwares out there, like Zendesk and stuff like that, and I looked at them, they look so complicated for what I need. Like all I need is for someone to post a message, comment, have a little status there for if it's done or not. So Vanilla Forum, I found that really good. Their search is horrible. If you ever tried to search on the ACF forum, I'm sorry. I'm dead sorry about that. I've tried to fix it and it's bad. But we'll address that with the smarter forum stuff in the future. And the other question was the website. The website's totally custom. It's not built off anything. Yeah. Cool. Next, yeah, sure.
Are we getting a multiple options page in future?
Sorry?
Multiple options page?
So you're talking about like multiple...
I mean, in different menu items, let's say on appearance, on themes, settings.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So at the moment with the options add-on, you've got the ability to have one kind of main options page and then sub-pages. But you're talking about the idea of having multiple main options pages?
Yeah, main option pages or under, let's say, themes, under themes section,
yeah,
or appearance section.
To actually put it within other WordPress menu items?
Yes.
Yeah, right, that could be cool. Chuck that up on the forum, that'd be good. Yeah. Chuck that on the to-do. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you started marketing your plugins.
Yeah, right. I don't think I've actually ever done marketing. I don't think ACF has ever appeared anywhere. Basically, people just started using it, and I was always kind of baffled why people started using it, and I'm thankful that people did. Genuinely thankful. So yeah, absolutely no marketing, which is, yeah, interesting. I think it's one of those things, again, like comes back to that WordPress.org repository and the power that has. You know, once people start talking about it and link to it, it kind of can go viral, which is pretty cool. Yeah?
You've been able to centralise your support all in one place, by which I mean you've got GitHub and WordPress.org.
Yeah. No. No, you can't centralize it. So the support forum is what I look at every day or two. Yep. The stuff on GitHub goes a little bit unnoticed every once in a while. And the support forum or the support module within the actual plugin on the WordPress repository. That doesn't get looked at, and I'm sorry if anyone's posted on there, but it does say please go to the proper support page. Yeah, and it's hard because you need to keep everything centralized, and there's no point having it all over the place. It's better to drive people into one place. So if you can, just keep linking them back to that main support site. Yeah. Yeah.
First off, just want to say thank you for ACF. I know a lot of the devs here, so on behalf of the devs, thank you.
Thanks.
And actually, my question's kind of sort of similar to that. I know obviously you're a support forum on your website, and you've got WordPress.org.
Yeah.
Or I was basically going to ask how you handle and manage both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, just exactly how anyone else would. Yeah. Just try to look at them every day. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
I'm curious because the documentation's been good enough that I haven't needed to look at the support forum, but I'm curious to know if you've deputised people. Have you got much buy-in from your users with the community supporting the plugin?
Sorry. What? Do you reckon you could rephrase that?
I'm wondering if you've got many of your regular users providing support in forums.
Oh, right, yeah. It's not often, but there have been a few champion guys on that support forum that are just answering questions, and I get to it and it's already answered. I'm like, brilliant, like that's great. It doesn't happen. It's not so much of like a Stack Exchange type massive community forum, but yeah, there's a few people that are out there. So if anyone's here that's answered anything, thank you. That was good. That's really great. Cheers, man. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You said you haven't done any marketing, but have you tried to be active in communities like this consciously for that purpose? Or?
Right. No. Again, like
I have to drag Elliot here for the recording.
Yeah, no, I've been a little bit of a hermit, to be quite honest, and only lately. These guys have pulled me down into the WordPress kind of meetups and camps. So it's something that I want to get more involved with. Yeah. Definitely.
You don't see it as necessary for?
I think it could definitely be a boost. ACF took its time. I've been working on it for a good 2 years. And I feel like only now does it have proper momentum. So maybe if I had done some smarter kind of marketing tactics at the start, that would have picked up a lot quicker. And I think that if I was to jump into something new now, knowing what I do, I would probably try some smarter tactics like that and getting involved and getting it out there. Definitely.
I have another one.
Go for it.
I can imagine there was a big kind of chicken and egg situation with like the website is great, the resources are great, a lot of time would have gone into that to develop it to a point where people are confident the plugin.
Yeah.
They feel like it's solid, it's got everything I need, it's worth paying for.
Yeah.
But obviously that takes a lot of time. You can't,
For sure.
you can't be working on it full time.
Yeah.
Before you get to that stage.
Yeah.
So
it's been a real battle, and so I redesigned the support section, the resources section of the website maybe 4 months ago or so. And I took out a good few weeks out of any ACF dev time, if anything, and just worked solely on that and put everything on hold just to get that done, because I'm sure you could do some amazing work with graphs and work out like this one point where the amount of hours you put into support kind of starts making sense for the amount of hours you put into your resources, or the website kind of starts cutting down on the hours from your support questions. And I think it's kind of difficult. There's so many things to manage, and it's so hard to manage these things once the ball is rolling. So ACF now, it's pretty set in its way that it needs, an hour or two of support, and it needs an hour on resources, and it needs whatever on dev. It's kind of hard to stop that ball from rolling at the moment. But if I was to jump into something new, I would just not even touch the plugin. I would just get the website done, get all that support done. Obviously have a plugin, but I wouldn't release it. Maybe on Git, but I wouldn't put it onto WordPress. I wouldn't let people start talking about it until I had all those resources done. I was really happy with them. Yeah.
So how long were you into working on it before you were kind of at that break-even point for time invested?
Yeah, I think they've kind of both been growing together, because the bigger it gets, the more support, and then also the more, well, it's the less time you have for resources. You know, the more time that you put into support and into working on the plugin, you've got less time to work on resources. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer the question. It's just tough. You just kind of got to do what you can with whatever time you have. Yeah.
Actually, similar to that, Elliot, have you got any kind of stats on how much of your documentation gets looked at, and which of them popular articles and that kind of thing? Like
that would have been good for me to organise that.
Because I completely agree with what you're saying about it's difficult to know how much time to throw into the documentation, because you can't fully quantify how many less support questions you're getting because of that. Yeah,
I had a look at some stats on the support, but I didn't have a look at like analytics for the resources. Yeah, smarter person would have done that. Yeah, look, I think it's just all important, and I don't think there's some percentage that you can set aside to doing each of the tasks. You just have to find time to do them all, and it's.
For us, we don't have any premium plugins that we're selling, but we're still dealing with customer support for the websites that we've built. And recently, we've got a lot of support ticketing stuff, and tickets come through and things. Recently, we've added a checkbox when we're closing off the ticket that says, what I've written here, I might want to reuse that and turn it into an article.
Yeah, nice.
Because you get a lot of generic ones.
Exactly.
And we've added that checkbox a few months ago, and now we've kind of trying to spend 5% of our time going back and looking at the tickets that we've marked as, hey, this could be useful to document.
Perfect.
Because sometimes you write 4 paragraphs response and you go, well, that's half the article that I could have written. Most of it just need to reword it.
I have a really primitive version of that where I just put the URL into a to-do list. And they're all sitting there, and it's like, this would be great as a resource article.
But we haven't spent that much time going back and reviewing that list.
I think it's kind of crazy that no one's made a support forum software that's like built into good resource. Well, they probably have Zendesk or whatever does it really well. But I feel like I couldn't find one that kind of tied the two together, resource and support. You know, simple stuff like when you're typing in a support question, it could be querying the resources and putting them up, you know, have you read this? You know, pushing people away from the support and more into the resources that already exist. If that does exist, please tell me, because I would love to start using it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we'll go behind.
I don't know if you've ever been on like a WordCamp website. If you try to load the ticket without it, they won't let you until you do your query, and then you look at 3 articles, and then you
that's genius.
That's Zendesk. They use Zendesk now.
Yeah, right.
Kind of an out-of-the-box way. What problem you're having, and to summarise that before you get to the submitted ticket. Brilliant. But their stuff is mostly private tickets rather than public forums.
Right.
They've got both now.
Yeah.
But I think either way, it still prompts you to look through the knowledge base first. Like
every time you have to search what it is already before you can do anything.
Yeah. It's difficult because I feel like developers are going to look through documentation. I can't remember the last time I ever asked a question on a forum. I'll either look at the code or look at the documentation because I'll get a quicker turnaround time. So I think that also plays back to the idea that all the questions on your support forum are going to be from maybe non-developers. I don't know if you guys have experienced something similar. I know. Well, and yet the support forum has that many.
Maybe a really quick show of hands. Who's submitted a thread on the support forums on Elliot's site for the plugin versus who's looked at the documentation and never needed to contact support? I've looked at documentation.
Beautiful.
That's solved that problem. That's kind of validation for you that effort spent on that kind of stuff is definitely not being wasted.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Does it get nerve-wracking when you're pushing up to your thousands of users, or that kind of, do you get over that as you just keep doing it so much?
Oh, right. No. There's always this one point where you've been working, it's always on the big versions. The little stuff, that's cool. You know it's bug fixes, you know it's cool. But when you're working on a new feature and you've been working on it for a week or two, and then you know it's fine. You know it's fine, and then you push it to SVN. There is a there's a moment, actually it's the moment is before you push it where you go, I don't actually care anymore. If it breaks, I actually don't care. I've looked at it that many times and I've run that many tests that if it breaks, whatever, I don't care. Push it up. And then you kind of do freak out for a little while. But then, you know, as long as no support tickets come in, then it's alright.
Alright, maybe go 2 more questions and then we better...
Yeah.
I noticed you've got plugins that have been built by other people, essentially.
Yeah.
How's the relationship with those developers been? And, can you describe that a bit?
Yeah, those developers are brilliant. I've chatted to them on, mostly via GitHub, that's where we do like our chatting. And so there's only maybe 4 or 5 user-submitted add-ons. I know that people have made heaps of fields for custom sites. You know, I've made maybe 4 or 5 that were very custom for a site, and I can't put them onto the add-ons site because, you know, it's part of their website. I can't distribute that. And it's been great, yeah. I really love the fact that people are kind of making add-ons for the plugin. It's brilliant to see people using it correctly. It's kind of also interesting to see people's code. Sometimes it's very different from the code that you'd expect, but hey, everyone's got their own styles, and that's cool. But yeah, it's been really good. I wish more people kind of submitted their add-ons. If anyone has any like fields that they've made for ACF, I'd love you guys to post them onto the support forum, and then we can put them onto the add-ons page as much as possible. There's a few on there that are, you know, there's like a Gravity Forms, Contact Form 7 type thing, a Google Maps, that works quite well. There's a few more that I've got to put up there. But yeah.
Anyone else?
One more.
You last?
One more? There's no more.
The pressure of being last.
Yeah, too much.
Cool. Alright, awesome.
Sweet.
Awesome. Alright, we'll just get it set up with the next speaker for a sec. Bear with us.
Good to go. Which side is that side?
Sometimes it works straight away, other times.
Yeah, it should work right away.
Yep.
I can photo of myself.
Password like.
Nah, it's alright. Yeah, the photo of me is great as well.
Slide 1.
Yeah. How do I do full screen? Oh, I can play it.
Play just down near where your cursor is.
Yeah. I can play it from my phone as well, using the keynote remote. It's pretty cool.
It's a paid app, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's nice. It's like $2. Cool. Cool. So we've got 5 minutes.
We're hanging around here till 8:30ish, so just see how we go.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be like, actually say if you have any questions, you want to talk about something more, just chat about it. Like it's really
cool. Alrighty. Next up, we've got Anthony Cole, who is going to give us a rundown on his WordPress development workflow. So make him feel welcome.
Yeah. Hey guys, as James said, I'm Anthony. I will give you my background. I'm just going to basically have this really open-ended. I chose Bill because I haven't actually practiced this presentation before. So we're just going to kind of have an open-ended. If you guys want to chip in or talk about something, we can just have a chat. Like it's going to be a really informal presentation because I like doing it that way versus me talking and you guys not understanding something. So just feel free to chat. Today I'm going to be talking about my development workflow. And I come from a different background than most of you probably do. I did a lot of small WordPress stuff initially, and then somehow got sucked into working for ad agencies as a web developer. working in an advertising agency, by the way, is not like Mad Men at all. It's quite the opposite. It's quite busy and you don't really have a life or time to drink all the time. So essentially, I've worked on a few really high-profile sites that use WordPress in the context of an agency, and I'm going to talk about I'm just going to talk about what I do. Like, it's actually really basic. My workflow is really basic because I don't like really complex tools. I don't like really crazy things. So I just like doing things more traditionally. And the thing that inspired this talk was actually Bronson Quick did a talk at WordCamp. For it. And I just use Sublime Text and use Verdump to edit things. Like, I'm actually normally write plugins. I don't do that much front end anymore. I normally do plugins or more DevOps stuff. So I use Sublime Text. I use occasionally I will use the editor, or I guess the WebKit debugger, and I use GitHub or Bitbucket. SVN is, I had to use SVN a couple of months ago and I didn't like using it because you have to be online to use it. There's lots of problems, so I generally like using GitHub. If you guys want something cool, I know I shouldn't promote products, but Bitbucket is free for unlimited repositories. The UI isn't as great as GitHub, but it's run by Atlassian. It's an Aussie company. They have free repositories. It integrates with a lot of the other stuff they offer, like Confluence, etc. So that stuff's really cool, and it integrates with Jira as well, which from an agency perspective is used a lot in big agencies here, and has a bit of a more advanced, it's a bug tracker. So it's a more advanced bug tracker. And then essentially the workflow that I've come up with when I do agency work is to essentially build everything locally and check it into one WordPress install, like one massive GitHub repository with a WordPress install, etc., and all your plugins and themes and stuff. Some people use submodules, but I find that that's just really slow, where you have all your plugins in a submodule and all your themes in a submodule. I've done that before, but it's just, it doesn't work. You have merge conflicts and it just gets really messy. So I just put everything into one repository, and then you can just essentially use Deploy HQ or Beanstalk to do your deployments, and that's really, really cool because it's really fast and you can do it without having to upload things all the time, and it understands change sets. So this is more DevOps stuff, and as an apology, my presentation is going to use a lot of technical terms because I'm a bit of a sysadmin as well. So I use those two. I use MAMP locally. I really shouldn't use MAMP because it's not usually what my server environment's running on, and I like to have something that works with the same PHP version that I'm using on a production or a development server, because when you don't do that, the one time you don't, it ends up breaking. And I've had PHP versions where I used a PHP 5.3 function and the server was PHP 5.2 and it broke and it wasn't cool. So in a perfect world I use Vagrant because it's more DevOps, but you can actually script your entire development server together. There's lots of really cool stuff for it. I've linked to it in the slides later, so if you guys want to check it out, it's cool. But it basically creates an entire server instance on your local machine, and you can like pull in Ubuntu things and use Puppet. It's pretty cool. So next up, WordPress. I usually use bleeding edge beta versions on production stuff. It's not good. I think one time I was working on a tourism site for a New Zealand, big New Zealand, conglomerate of New Zealand tourism boards, and I think I had put in a really funny, I was a junior developer at this time, so I had put in something along the lines of, "You are really stupid," in a WP Dime message, and it was like, I was like, no one will ever see this. This will be really, really cool. Like, it's gonna be awesome. Like, no one's gonna ever see this, so it won't show up. I get a call from a dear friend of mine and one of my bosses saying, Anthony, someone from the tourism board just called me, and they're seeing this interesting message. And I just kind of said, oops, I'm sorry. So that was one of the biggest mistakes I made. So just be really careful. Even if it's great to use it. I come from an agency background. We're quite different to all this whole talk of like in a startup. I've worked in startups and I've worked in agencies. Agencies are different to startups in the fact that we tend to need to be more meticulous and need to test things and be really stringent with what comes out as a product, because we can't have things break and tell the client that they're really stupid. So in my experience, I'd say test things. Occasionally I don't follow the rule. Occasionally I follow this rule of using bleeding stuff. Occasionally I don't. It just depends on the project. If I'm working on a plugin, I tend to do the more advanced stuff, because usually everything's faster, everything's more efficient. So that's that. I'll talk about testing as well. This is another thing, as demonstrated in the previous slide. Testing is kind of hard. You can't really understand what happens all the time, especially in WordPress, because it's not primarily written for unit testing and written like a framework like, say, Symfony or a really advanced MVC framework, or say Rails, for example, where everything is testable, even your unit like database stuff. Whereas here, you really need to do front-end tests. And I have a small pipe dream of writing stuff with Phantom.js, which is a Node.js script that essentially starts up a headless WebKit or a headless browser, and will navigate your entire website and look for things. You can actually ask it to go say, hey, look for this H1 tag on my homepage, or go look for this awesome really random thing that wouldn't be there if it's broken, or look for a JavaScript error. So you can actually ask it to just validate everything. There's something else called Buster.js, which is really more advanced, that will actually test it in different browsers. And that's another side note. Always test in Firefox. A lot of web developers these days use Chrome. Some people use Firefox, but always test in Firefox, because I've had a few things happen where I didn't do something right in Chrome, which is usually really accepting of random CSS bugs or random CSS mishaps that you might do. Firefox isn't as welcoming of that, is what I've found. And it's going to get interesting with Google forking WebKit as well. So that's testing, but check out Phantom.js. It's really cool. It's essentially with Node.js. It's pretty much JavaScript. Anybody can write it. I haven't written anything in it yet, but I know I could write something with Phantom.js by just copying an example and tweaking things. So that's that. And hosting. I'm going to talk a bit about hosting from my point of view. I promised myself I'd put a picture of Grumpy Cat into this presentation, so I have. I actually really don't like shared hosting. I'm a sysadmin, I'm a massive geek, so I have a lot of experience with things breaking on servers. I don't like shared hosting. I think it's a bit slow. I can recommend a few really good, awesome Australian web hosts, but for the most part, shared hosting, you get what you pay for. You get several hundred sites running on one server, and it can be a bit slow. So I kind of tend to be a bit mad about it. But it's fine if you need it for in certain contexts. I actually like to work in the cloud. Because the cloud makes everything better. It doesn't really, but people just you hear marketing from some companies about the cloud, but it's a bunch of it doesn't matter. But when I've worked at a few agencies where they use AWS, and AWS is awesome, is what I found, especially when you have to learn it in about 5 hours. And I had to learn it once. It was a bit of a learning curve, but it's actually really cool because you can do things really quickly. Especially if you have Puppet scripts that basically will script your entire web hosting setup. This is really geeky, but what I basically do is what I've seen. This is probably what I recommend, because in Australia, like in the US, you see these massive charts of what they do with WordPress installs, where they have like 10 different web heads and do all this caching with varnish and stuff, and it's absolute rubbish here because we don't really have the traffic to justify that on most campaign sites. So what I recommend is using, if you're on AWS, this is just really geeky. I just threw it in because it interested me, and that's what this presentation is about. So I basically use what's basically called a load balancer. So you have at the front of everything, you'll have one load balancer, which is essentially something that drives traffic to different web servers. For those of you who aren't familiar with different, like with server stuff, or for like with advanced server stuff, essentially you can balance two Apache servers on with the same files. So you basically essentially deploy to one server and another server. In the case of WordPress, you need to have all your images and like media and uploads stored on S3, and you can just have the same copy of WordPress on both servers because it just it's good for when you get so much traffic that you need that instance, or you need that case. I use Nginx for all my stuff. Apache and MobPHP are really slow. Nginx is quite fast and nice. Also on AWS, just a note, if you ever use it, don't try to run your own MySQL server, because if you do, you will bring a major website down at about 6 o'clock at night. It's not pretty when you really want to go home and you get a call from a major, I'm under NDA, so I can't say which one it was, but it's one you would have all heard of, and it went down at about 5 o'clock, and it wasn't pretty, and I had to stay till like 8 o'clock at night to fix it, and it was a big mess, but it was just because we had used their own MySQL, they had used their own MySQL setup. It was before I got there, so they had used MySQL on their own, and it was messy, so we ended up having to do really nasty things with the database that I will never repeat, because it was bad. And I got frantic on Twitter and asked a bunch of people to help, but no one did. So always use RDS. RDS is actually a MySQL service run by Amazon. Essentially, it's basically Amazon takes care of all the dirty work that you need to do when you normally have like a SQL database. They just manage it, they make sure it doesn't go down. It can handle a lot of traffic, and it just stays up, and you basically import a database, so that's really cool, and it will never go down. You don't need to deal with replication or any of that garbage. Varnish, don't use Varnish. I've had to deal with Varnish. This is a bit of a geeky thing. Varnish used to be cool back before Amazon existed, and CDNs were a big thing. These days you tend to not need it because it has some really good performance advantages, but for what we use for now, CDNs are equally as good because they distribute files around the world, A, and B, that just gets in the way of everything else, and it's messy. I don't like using it anymore. So that's that. And it's really expensive. Like that entire setup would probably cost about $120 to $150 a month to run. I've used it on a few microsites for big brands. You don't need to use that for most of what we work on. I just use WordPress on a Linode, which is like another shared cloud thing that I set up 2 years ago, and it still somehow works. And it's just Apache. It's not a big deal. Like, it doesn't really matter. And this is a list of all the cool stuff some of the cool stuff I talked about. And these are the credits for the few images I've used. So yeah, and Anthony took the picture of Bronson, by the way, so thank him if you want. Yeah. And that's that. I'll open up for questions, and if anybody wants to have a talk about their workflow or critique something, then go for it.
Anyone got any questions they want to ask Anthony? Or
yeah.
Do you mind talking a little bit about Deploy HQ and Beanstalk?
Okay, cool. So essentially, there's two. Deploy HQ is essentially, they actually have their own like Beanstalk as well. They spread onto different products. Deploy HQ is essentially something that will take a GitHub install or a GitHub repository and deploy it to somewhere you want it to be. So if you have a GitHub install with all your WordPress stuff, and you want to not have to upload everything manually, this will go take it, and you can actually go run like a WordPress upgrade and say, cool, after you're done, hit a file. Like it'll basically say SSH to a server, or FTP to a server, or I think it supports a few other protocols as well. But you just basically say, I want you to take these files and put them onto my server, and once you're done, hit a file, be it an upgrade script or something else, and it just does it automatically. Beanstalk is very much the same, but Beanstalk does like, it's basically essentially a private GitHub, and it does all of that Git hosting as well. So that's, yeah, essentially they just kind of manage that whole deployment process. And Capistrano is, like, Beanstalk has some problems with deploying to multiple servers. Usually you have to do it manually, or you have to set a certain setting, because it'll start clashing and things will lock because you're using SVN, or we use SVN in that instance. So Capistrano is actually really cool as well, because it's a local thing. But it can support, it's used by a lot of startups in San Francisco to deploy Ruby scripts, where they have to run a lot of stuff. They have to like run, say, database migrations. So those tools are mainly used for deployments and processes that we as developers normally do ourselves. But in this instance, it's where you don't want something to break, or if you want to roll back really quickly, it helps you do that. So that's what I use it for.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a random question. Have you heard of Speedy protocol from Google?
Yes, I have, yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Have you implemented that?
I've seen, I know Automatic, is it Automatic, or someone has actually written a plugin that can use it. I haven't personally used it. I'm not sure. I think the performance gains are mainly on Chrome browsers and certain browsers. I'm not too familiar with it, but I know that there's plugins that exist for it that you can install in Apache. And
yeah, you can. Apache 2.4, something like that.
Yeah. So that all exists, but no, I haven't used it. I haven't seen the performance or the metrics around it, but yeah.
Cool. I just, because you're system administrator.
I've heard about it. It's kind of one of those things that you kind of want to look at, but you don't really, in Australia, we're quite fortunate because we don't really need to deal with that stuff a lot of the times. Like I've never had to go and say we need to use Speedy. Like you wouldn't really say that because it's so cutting edge. It's something that you do if you had extra time.
Yeah. For those who don't know, it's a next HTTP protocol which Google tried to propose.
Yeah.
So that's called.
Yeah. Essentially, it's it's a changing of a few rules in the HTTP API that exists that lets you makes things really fast. So yeah.
So is that reliant on web browsers implementing?
Yeah, it's something like Firefox. I think Firefox, like Firefox 18 and Chrome, whatever, support it. So I'm not too sure about numbers, but no, it exists. Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned WordPress, so if I build a WordPress blog for a friend, can you recommend a good host in Australia?
I'd say Anchor. I like Anchor. They're a bit expensive, but I have had to deal with them a lot, and they always answer the phone. They're always happy. I think at one point I called Anchor, I think, once every day for about 2 weeks because our client was a bit of a pain, and we got to know each other really well. And every time I'm at an agency that doesn't have really good web hosts, I just say, well, guys, switch to Anchor. You'll pay a bit more. You'll pay $30 a month for a basic install, or you pay a lot for a VPS or a production environment. But if something goes down, they're always around and they're always good. And they managed GitHub's servers before they moved. GitHub basically fired Rackspace and hired Anchor for a while until they got their own internal guys. So Anchor are really good. They have people in the US, they have people in Australia to manage support. They're just awesome guys to deal with. So I'd go with them.
How do you spell that?
Anchor, ANCHOR. .net.au, or I think it is. But yeah, they're good guys. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what are you recommending? CDNs?
CDNs, Amazon's good. Like, they're in Sydney now. So there's a lot of these US-based CDNs there's like 20 of them, I think, 30 of them now, that exist in the US that all have, but Amazon essentially is probably the best one. Like, CloudFront works in Australia, it works everywhere else. It's fast, it's supported, it's the biggest one. There's limitations, but it's generally pretty good. There's no other, like, I think here, Amazon's actually one of the only ones that has a data point here. I think that they can go to Internode and ask for a CDN, but it's ridiculously expensive, and it's just, you don't really need to use it now. So yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Go for it.
Oh, sorry. There's a pretty common problem a lot of people have with managing a dev environment online, where you've got clients or brands where you're sharing your tests with a lot of people, and then you might test a new feature that you have to roll out to the live site. And you can't really do anything on the live site until you do a midnight patch or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a good method for dealing with that?
So you're asking if
I guess the main problem is like you either commit to redoing everything, because you can't just roll the dev database over the live database. It might have been updated for a month since the last time you changed the dev side? Or?
Yeah, I'd say every time you add a feature, just make sure it works. Like, it's hard to say this because I've had that problem happen before as well, where something's just gone wrong in production. The best way you can do it is just keep your staging it in sync as much as possible, because rolling back is hard, but especially with, like, that's the inherent problem, is that WordPress, if you were to say use Rails, for instance, you just roll back the database and roll back everything else. But since we're dealing with WordPress, you have to say, cool, I need to figure out what option I messed up, or figure out what thing went wrong. And you just have problems. I think the easiest way what I'd say to recommend to do is just make sure that staging is, meticulously make sure that staging is always up to date, and test every single small feature of your website, or every small feature that you're doing, and make sure that do a run through of everything before you go to production, and just essentially just sync staging and have the client test it, because things will go wrong. I've seen plenty of things go wrong. It happens. It's an inherent thing that clients have to understand. Like, the web isn't perfect. We're not perfect as human beings, and it's going to happen. So it's just a matter of, I guess, I'd just say to just be careful, because it's just going to happen anyways. It's just an inherent issue. But yeah, just sync staging. Make sure that you test, because there's no really other easy way to get past it.
Might go 2 more questions.
Yeah,
Elliot.
go for it.
It's kind of going on from that as well. Like, I feel like we've got all our file version control sorted at so many solutions. But is there anything happening with database version control?
So database version control in WordPress, from a software development methodology, what you normally do is use something called database migrations, which PHP isn't actually that familiar with. I've used a few for web apps that I've built, where I've just there's a few libraries for PHP called ruckusing, etc. But WordPress inherently uses its own schema upgrades, so it's hard to manage that. If I was to say anything, I would say, and this is really hard. Because coming from an agency background, you want to have your database in version control.
And even just that whole live dev.
Yeah. Well, just.
And sometimes you just want to put in some content that they've done.
I haven't used it myself, but there is something called, I think it's Ramp.
Yeah, Ramp is really good. I've worked at a few places that have used it. Last time I used it, it didn't actually work properly, but Ramp is really good, and the crowd favorite is probably the model example of an agency that uses WordPress for a lot of big things. So I'd look at that's an interesting problem. Database stuff has always been a bit airy-fairy for me, because I've literally seen things where the client's gone, oh, cool, we need to change something, or I realize that I've made a massive change that's destroyed a database, or I think the beautiful moment was sending out an email to about 100 of the most important people in Australian tech that had massive break lines in it. That was good fun. So with database stuff, I'd probably say there's no easy answer to that. I'd love to work on something that did that, but it's still, with WordPress, the problem with WordPress is that it uses schema migration, so you'd essentially need to figure out, WordPress doesn't change the schema that often either. You just essentially need to even have have revisions for options as well. That'd probably be the most ideal thing, because I guess posts have revisions, so you could essentially write something. You could write a new table or write a new plugin that did that. I'll probably end up writing that, actually, because it sounds like a really good idea. Because with database migrations, it's really easy to roll back and forward. And the thing about what we do as well is, in an agency, once you get the content, it doesn't change that much as well. So you can just kind of let it sit there. And if it's for a static site that doesn't have a blog, it would be really easy to do that. So yeah, it doesn't exist, to answer your question. Yeah, cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
So just curious to know if anyone's had any luck doing anything like actually using the live, so the database on stage, and connecting to it remotely from local.
Yeah, I have done that a few times.
did you have to take any steps for did you have a trick for the translating the serialized content?
Not really. Well,
can I jump in?
Yeah.
So I'd say the way I've done it recently is do an export from production or wherever else, and then import that, or before you import that locally. I agree with what you're saying. If you're changing the URL of the database and all the serialized stuff breaks, but if you keep the link with the domain name the same, so if you go from mywebsite.com.au, just change it to .dev.au instead, and all the serialized stuff still works because it's still the same string length in there.
There is a one that gets around that.
Yeah, there's just a few search and replace ones as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a.
Yeah.
And in saying that, always make backups because there's nothing like looking at a website that you just finished. This is another thing. There's nothing like looking at a website that you've just finished that you think is really awesome, and realizing that you've just deleted several hundred profiles of people. This was a bit of a rush project, so I had to do it pretty quickly and do it live. But always make backups because backups I've learned to make backups more frequently now, and it helps when things go wrong because you can just kind of revert really quickly and revert changes. Same thing with Git as well. If you know how to do Git really well, you can just roll things back or cherry pick a commit and say, oh, that one failed or that one did whatever. So yeah, it's really good for that.
All right. Cool. All right. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. That's